All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of A Chat with Matt. Today, I am joined by Katanak, aka Dylan Catnach. I'm terrible with names.
Katanak. There we go. See, that's why I have. That's why it's my stage name, because I spelt it phonetically.
Yes, that's why I was able to read it, because I'm like, ooh, good phonetic.
Yep.
So, how you doing, man?
Good. How you, Matt?
I'm good. I'm good. How's the weather in Australia right now? I'm always curious when I'm talking to someone from another part of the world.
Well, currently, as you can probably see, wait, where's the door? There's the door out there. It's nice and sunny. Yeah, it's a beautiful day, like always. It's very rare that we get bad days here in Brisbane. It's a little bit cold, and when I say cold, I'm an Australian, so cold is like 20 degrees. Um,
I fucking wish.
yeah, I know. So yeah, currently it's a lovely day, and it's usually always a lovely day. I really love where I live in the world. I very rarely go outside and it's raining or cold, so it's nice.
Well, yeah, I imagine like right now in Canada here, let me look at my weather. It's about like 16, probably feels like 12, and that's a
Ooh.
warm day right now for us.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that personally. I'm more of a warm man than I am a cold man.
Well, I would assume based in Australia.
Yeah.
So don't tell me about the project. Tell me about Katanak, kind of like where it started, the progression, where it's going now, and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. So Katanak is an indie cross pop band, or solo project rather, that I started several years ago now. Just because I really wanted to get into writing pop music, just because it's something that I'd always wanted to do, and I'd always really enjoyed the intricacies of pop music. When a lot of people listen to pop, it sounds like this simple genre that's really easy to make. I had the same idea. I thought, not because I wanted to do it because it was easy, but for the longest time, I thought pop music was simple. And, anyone who gets into pop music is a lazy musician. And then I started listening to it and listening to all the production and the writing techniques that were going on. I'm like, no, this is not easy. It's not even close to easy. So I started, wanting to get into writing it. And then, I just started Katanak after, a year of doing some another solo project as an acoustic artist. I did Dylan Katanak music, where I just played acoustically to kind of give myself the confidence that I was able to do pop music, because a lot of other genres, at least in Brisbane, from where I'm from, you can get away with not being the greatest performer. And not to say that I was or wasn't, but I felt like I didn't have what it takes currently to be a pop artist, because, when you look at a pop artist, they're very pristine. They're very clean in the way that they perform, and their vocals are like perfect. And I didn't have that. So I wanted to kind of take a year to try and prove to myself that, no, I could do this. And then, yeah, as history went on, I proved to myself that I could, and then Katanak started, and it's only been getting better from there. And I'm really happy with everything that's going on and all the stuff that I'm making.
To touch on a few things you just said, the first thing I kind of want to touch on was the making of pop music. For a lot of people may seem easy, and that's definitely a stereotypical kind of trope that goes with that genre. But any sort of music creation has a lot more complexity than people think.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's, if even something as simple as, let's just say, who writes simple music? Maybe Sam Smith. Sam Smith is he usually gets hit pretty hard for writing simple music, at least in the eyes of other musicians. And, while on the outside as a listener, you go, wow, this is a pretty simple song. It's not really a hard melody. It's, it's just a piano in the background. But it's difficult, like, to make sure that sounds as good as it sounds while being very simple is quite a hard job. If anyone's ever tried to sit down and write a simple piano song and make it sound fantastic with just vocal and piano. It's difficult.
It takes an interesting approach because the especially in pop, something I've always noticed, it's kind of split in between a few different groups. One of the groups being people that can just write banger after banger after banger, and there's like more of a commercially focused aspect on it or a financial incentive for it. And there's also a group of people that are just trying to convey a certain thing, because there's nothing wrong with simplicity in music. Simplicity in music is a wonderful thing.
Absolutely.
But it takes skill to be able to not just throw everything in and be very coordinated, very tactical when it comes to something. Because obviously when a song hits, it hits either emotionally or financially or whatever it is. But with someone like Sam Smith, the complexity in his music comes from his vocal ability, from the emotional aspect that's created, from the lyrically emotional aspect. There's so many things that people don't consider. And also something I commend you on is the self-reflection, to be able to look at yourself and what you're doing and be able to say, okay, I want to do this, but I want to be able to check these boxes off, which is that self improvement, self-development. What made you kind of want to look internally to even think about doing something? Because not a lot of artists are able to do that.
It's much like any young artist. And when I say young, this is several years ago now. I was 16 or 17, and I played my first ever gig as a previous band, as my previous band called KB Theory. And this was like 2016, maybe. Yeah, I'll just pick 2016. It was 2016, and I played my first ever gig, and my uncle, who is also in the music industry, came along to the gig. And at that point, I, as maybe myself more than others, I had a massive ego. Like, it was really kind of out of check. And I played the gig, and he comes up to me after the gig, and he was like, "Hey, mate, I really don't think you should be the singer in your own band," and from that moment onwards, that was the slap in the face that my ego needed, because from that point on, I just went, no, he's right. Well, actually, for a while, I was kind of in denial about how bad I really was. And then after, I don't know, I just woke up one morning and went, no, he's right. I should have, and this is years, by the way. This isn't just a week, like years went by, and I just went, no, he's right. I should have, not particularly about the singing part, but I went, no, I'm going to prove you wrong. I can be better. And I wish I'd taken action sooner, particularly vocally. My guitar ability has always been what it's been. I've been pretty good at that. But when it comes to singing, it's like a sore spot, when you think you're good at something, and then someone goes, no, you're not. And you're like, no, I am. Trust me. I wish that I had taken his advice sooner and actually got vocal training. I recently started that about 3 months ago. I'm going to pick that. It's been a year journey, and then I got lessons 3 months since today, and haven't looked back. It's been incredible, the sheer improvement I've made in 3 months, and I wish I'd done that 2 years ago rather than 3 months ago. So if someone, without trying to be a terrible person, calls you out on something, generally you should probably listen, particularly if you're an artist. Self-reflection is incredibly important. And if you ever become self-aware that you've got a massive ego over something, just get rid of it. Just get rid of it. I'm no better than anybody else. I'm only trying to be better than myself.
And that's a beautiful way to approach life. It's having that ability to be self-aware, because that's kind of something that you and I actually have in common. Like back in the day, I had a very big ego, and I thought all these very high things about me. And then over time, I had some shit happen in life that kind of changed how I looked at things, and then I started progressing, and I kind of went through the same journey musically as well. And the music that I'm writing now and I'm currently working on recording right now, it's very honest in terms of my approach, because a big thing for me was I was looking more at a commercial aspect of it, which I realized it was hindering me as an artist and not allowing to myself to reflect on how I felt about something. And now the music I'm working on now is just me being honest and putting myself out there while continuously working on myself and being able to say, hey, let's take some time, reflect on this, and do some work internally as well. Because something that I'm sure, like, obviously we were talking about this kind of before the podcast, but the pandemic obviously in Australia didn't hit as hard as a lot of other parts of the world, Canada included. And so for you, during like that smaller window of lockdown did you kind of reflect on the project differently in terms of like either how you from a creative aspect, in terms of how you approach creating music, your self-development, or even like the live show aspect, performance side, the creative, the marketing, like any sort of aspect of it, really?
Because I was an essential worker, I worked at a supermarket, so it's not exactly 100,000,000% essential, but I was at work every day, so I didn't really have any lockdown. I was never locked down anywhere. But the pandemic kind of did make me take a look at what I was doing and go, how can I best improve Katanak for where I am currently? Because, everyone dreams big, but those big dreams were kind of squashed, considering now I can't leave the country, or at least not for another 6 months, a year, maybe even longer. So how do I, because I was actually looking at the UK and hoping that I could take my music over there, because the music that I write is very UK influenced and it's very popular in the UK currently, whereas it's not so popular here in Australia, which has been pretty difficult, considering that I'm not in the UK and I'm in Australia. So with that, we kind of took a step back and went, all right, what can we do right now that might help here? And that's basically just been sort of writing songs that are a little bit more popular over here, not because I'm trying to, like, what's the word, fit in or try to kind of sell out, I guess would be the word. But because, you've got to get a head start somewhere, and while we're stuck here, we might as well write something that people might want to hear it over here as well as over in the UK. And I mean, I love the songs that I'm writing, don't get me wrong, I'm not selling out for that kind of stuff. We were just tailoring it a little bit more to the genres that are popular here currently, rather than just going what I was doing kind of in the UK based type of stuff. So over here is like punk and like 2000s rock is kind of really popular at the moment. So, I've written a couple songs that are more on that aspect. We've also got, like, I don't know if you heard of the band Ocean Alley.
Yep.
Yeah, they're similar to, in a little bit of a way, they're similar to Harry Styles. So I agree with that. I've written a song that's, the next song actually, Sunday, is very Harry Styles, and that's quite popular. So yeah, hopefully that, when it comes out, will kind of boost us here in Australia, and then eventually we can hit those big dreams of going around the world with our music.
That's an interesting scenario to be in, the fact that, and that's also kind of want to mention a bit, ask a bit later in the podcast, is kind of the cultural recognition of music, especially from a developing artist standpoint, because Australia is kind of known for, like, do you know the Lazies?
I don't. No.
Okay, yeah, the Lazies, they're an Australian rock band. They kind of moved to Canada and started developing in Canada. And whenever they go over there and tour, they always do very well. And so it's interesting to see, the 2000s-esque rock punk, that definitely makes sense. And for what you're doing and being kind of stuck in your position and working and getting some attention over in the UK, it definitely puts you in a very hindering position in terms of what you can and can't do. And there's always that old expression. I think it's an American expression, like first you take over your backyard, then you take over your city or your block, then your city, then your country, then the world. So there's the natural progression in terms of developing a project. So working now, trying to get that audience while you're also already developing audience in another part of the world, it makes it difficult for marketing and strategizing and releasing content. It's definitely good to be developing, but the one positive I have to say is it's the fact that because of what's happening around the world and you can't travel and to go tour in other countries, it's allowed you to have this window where you can focus on your online development in those international markets.
Yeah, the online development part has been really interesting because, you know, back in the day, you really did have to, you know, get your backyard, get your block, get your city, get the world. But nowadays you can have one really, really good song, throw it up on YouTube, and suddenly if a record label hears it and they think they can sell you, then there you are, you're famous. So, you know, there is always that approach. But for the music that I make, you know, I'm not one of those like Pretty Beaver Boys where, you know, I have something that they can sell to a large audience of teen girls that want it. It's more of a band thing like the 1975 or the Wombats or 5 Seconds of Summer, even though 5 Seconds of Summer were very sellable with their very good looks as a teen boy band. But, you know, it's the kind of music I make is something where you kind of have to do it yourself and you have to pave your own road. So that's currently what we're working on, and we're hoping the next couple of songs that come out do quite well here in Australia and hopefully the world in some regard or another, so that we can start building our way to the top.
Astronomy, floating up above my body. Astronomy, you're on my mind. Astronomy, floating back down to earth. Was it just me? Alone again, moving through the shadows. That last song ringing in my ears again. Cutting through the park, stumbling in the dark. Got myself replaying you again and again and again and again. Astronomy, floating up above my body. Astronomy, you're on my mind. Astronomy, floating back down to earth. Was it just me? I'm singing your name like I already know you. So many things I wish I thought to say, yeah. But I've got your number, yes, I've got your number, yeah. Astronomy, floating up above my body. Astronomy, you're on my mind. Astronomy, floating back down to earth. Was it just me? What message sent? Did I word that in the right way?
And I think it shows in your music, and just from talking to you and starting to learn a bit more about you, uh, you doing what comes naturally to you, as opposed to, yeah, you mentioned like, oh, I'm not selling out because I'm kind of aiming it a little bit. There's nothing wrong with aiming towards a specific demographic, or just expanding the demographic you're going for, because you're trying to get as many people on you, getting eyes on your project and ears on your project as you can, to help expand the eyes, especially during this development stage of your career. And with the stuff you're doing, it's just, you're just being you, and something that I continuously push in, either if you have come over here because you discovered me on TikTok, you can tell from like my content on TikTok, for example, or just conversations I've had in this podcast. It's better to just have an authenticity and just enjoy what you're doing, because people can see and hear when you're enjoying producing the content that you're producing, writing the songs that you're writing, the emotion you put in the songs, the live performance aspect, having fun in what you're doing. Audiences can pick up on that, and they connect with that authenticity, and they connect with that emotion, because when you are able to convey an emotion in someone through a piece of content, or through a piece of music, or through any sort of art medium, it truly carries over long term, because authenticity is the number one selling point in artists, and having that personal connection. And I can see that that's something you are working on, and it's good that you're actually focusing on that development aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. If you write something that you don't believe in, this carries over to any business. If you are doing something that you don't believe in and you're not passionate about it, then why are you doing it? Obviously I understand if you're trying to pay bills, that makes sense. I kind of hate where I work, but as an artist, if you want to write something that you believe in, because if you believe in it, everyone else is going to believe in it. So it's, people can tell when you don't like what you're doing.
Oh yeah, and that's what people want too. Is this pandemic has really showed a lot of us, and artists, including yourself, including myself included, where we life is too short to not do the things you want to do.
Absolutely.
And you should be able to, if you want to just explore creative outlets, but you still have to pay for rent or food, then yes, it is possible to manage a job. I have a full-time job, and I do this podcast, and I do other stuff, and I write music, and it's because I want to do those things. And a big change for me came from when I realized, okay, life is too short. I'm starting to get a bit older. I really want to just focus on exploring the paths I want to explore. And if it turns out that something comes of it, that's great. If not, at least I can look back on my life knowing that I got to do the thing that I wanted to do in the way that I wanted to do it.
Absolutely. Life is far too short, and it's very fickle as well. It won't care at the end if you did this or did that. So you just got to do it your way. And unfortunately, with following a dream, it usually doesn't start out very easy. It usually doesn't end very easy. There are a few people that get to the end and have it pretty easy. So hopefully with music, anyone that wants to follow that dream and is passionate enough about it can get there. And I still hope that in this industry that it is about hard work rather than the 1% that gets to go, oh, I like you, so I'll let you be famous. But I'm passionate about it, and hopefully we get there in the end. And actually, there is no hope. We'll get there in the end.
Exactly. Positive affirmation.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about that point is, and I'm sure a lot of people have noticed it, especially when it comes to creating your own pieces of work through whatever art medium you choose, a lot of people are realizing that you don't necessarily need that 1% of people who are almost that gatekeepers to the land beyond where everything is secure and stable. Things, at least from aspects I've seen, the independent artists that have created successful careers as independent artists and have have control over all the aspects of their career, they seem to be the most stable and the most happy because they don't have to, they can choose what they want to do as opposed to having to listen to a table full of people. And also when they're creating, they don't have that incentive to, and this, as much as I love TikTok, for example, because I'm getting a little attention on there right now, it's there's that incentive to create a song that has that 15-second highlight point or the 30-second highlight point or whatever it is. And that can be great. But like I said, I'd rather focus on the things that I want to do. And if people see that I'm enjoying myself and doing what I'm doing, then they'll come along in time. It's all about hard work and patience and doing what you feel is right in the moment, whether it's musically or a business decision or pretty much anything.
Absolutely. There's always that hit factor that people are looking for, but really, if you write something that you love, people will come to it if it's something that they will love as well. You know, there are a lot of artists out there that their sole job is to write hits. You know, it's basically anyone on the top 40 these days. You know, if you want to stay in the top 40 and keep your contract, you basically have to have a hit every time you release something. But if you're just a regular artist that doesn't care about hits and just wants a career, like, you just need a solid fan base. You know, you want to be Drake, you won't have heaps and heaps of money, but you'll have a career, and that's better than anyone working at a supermarket, or it's better than anyone. I mean, and to be fair, I know people that really love working at supermarkets. I don't know how they do it. I'm not one of those people. But, you know, there are certainly a lot of people that don't like where they're at. So, you know, if you have a career in music, no matter how good or bad, you're doing better than some.
And that's the thing. We all have that ability to pursue whatever we want to do. And if some of us enjoy working at a supermarket, that's great. If some of us want to have a career in music, that's great too. Like that's the interesting thing about life is, and what I think a lot of people forget, but this pandemic has shown us, is we have the choices to do what we want to do in the moment we want to do it. And we have control over all those aspects of life. Something I did want to ask is, because, you know, getting deep and all that shit's wonderful, I do kind of want to ask about what the live scene over in Australia is right now. Like, are there shows, like, are they half capacity, full? Just from an analytical standpoint, I'm so curious because obviously in many parts of the world, and Canada included, we're in lockdown right now in the specific part of the country I'm in, and we can't do shows really of any kind right now, and shows are getting rescheduled, even outdoor shows. Like, what's going on over there right now?
For us, everything is full capacity, at least in Queensland. You know, we did have those sit-down shows, which were awful, unless you're like a jazz band. You know, there was half capacity for a bit, but now everything's gone back to normal. You know, the only things that are still half capacity or not even are like really, really big shows. So, you know, really, really big bands that come out here, they still for some reason are keeping it like half capacity, even though our sports stadiums are full up to like 55,000 people. So, you know, and the Australian government personally has always been not really the greatest for music. They're, you know, they're the type of government that's more towards, you know, the academic and the business side of things. They think, you know, any kind of art isn't worth their time, which is slightly annoying considering, you know, how much funding they took away from everything musical. But it is what it is. Maybe one day the world will get some governments that actually care about art, because at the end of the day, you know, business and academics is all good, but when you go home from that job, what do you listen to? You listen to music. You look at a painting that an artist has painted. You know, you live in a house that an artist created. Like, everything that we do has to do with art. So it's one of those things where art is very important. It's the release from the rest of the week that sucks because you're at work.
Yeah, that's something I've always tried to wrap my head around, is I on the business aspect for me and my business side, I do somewhat understand a government aspect, because the thing, if you look at it from a financial standpoint, more people are making lots of money and stable careers through money, business, academic, all that kind of stuff. While arts, it can be more difficult to have a sustainable revenue stream from arts, especially if you're only looking at a top level versus how many people are trying to do something and not fully making careers on it. But the other side of it for me is there needs to be more arts funding, because governments, and like Canada's guilty of it too. Like Canada has produced some massive exports musically. Australia has produced massive exports musically as well. And it blows my mind the fact that there isn't as much government support as there should be, because there's literally arts everywhere. And something that a lot of people have noticed, especially a lockdown, is when they're consuming anything, it's literally you're consuming art. You're watching something, a movie. There's artistic aspects of that you have to be creative. Music, it's literal art, visual art, whatever it is. Art is around us all the time. And it confuses me why governments don't see that. And I think with the pandemic, I don't know if it's changed over there, but I feel like audiences in Canada, at least, I've noticed there's been a higher appreciation for art and more of an excitedness to go back to shows. I think the fact that when you say those bigger shows are half capacity, is that the bigger artists that are Australia based, or is that bigger artists from other parts of the world?
Well, I guess both currently, because I don't think I think other bands are being allowed in, but particularly Australian bands. So any bands that would be playing 2,000 plus capacity venues, I think, to my knowledge, that's been cut down. Like I'm not anywhere near that. I'm only playing venues that can hold 100 to 600 people, or 100 to 600. But, so there's, in the government size, no need to cut that down. But, for those bigger bands, I do believe that it's only at half capacity. And I don't know why, considering stadiums over here are full. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, see, if you didn't mention that stadium's full thing, I wouldn't argue that, because I'm like, oh, in my mind, yeah, liability, they want to make sure that people are safe, yada, yada. But the fact that sports stadiums are full, that's kind of literally, to me, it comes across as they're not even denying the limiting of art versus the focusing on allowing full sports arenas to that blows my mind, actually. I don't really know how to process
I think at the end of the day, it's, sports events create huge amounts of money. And I think the government was like, all right, we're sick of not making any money, so we better just let things happen, which is then weird, going, all right, so yeah, we're trying to put on a 2,000 person show, and they're like, no, it's got to be at half capacity. It's like, but Suncorp Stadium just had a full 55,000 people there. They're like, no, forget it. You didn't see anything.
Yeah, it seems to be that lack of appreciation for the arts, because a 2,000 cap venue, while it's not a stadium, that's a decent chunk venue. There is some revenue to come of that, but also it's the appreciation of arts, allowing people to experience it, be together. Because, as you know, more than anything, being a musician, the live show is a place where everyone congregates for the same reason, for the love of music, for the appreciation of music, to experience the art that is being created live on stage in front of them. And I truly hope that at some point, especially in Australia and in all governments, that there is more of a recognition of the importance of art and supporting arts and culture, and people will see that. And I hope that kind of translates over into government, and not just focusing on, obviously money is a huge aspect, but the thing is, at the end of the day, like you said, you come home, what do you listen to? You listen to music. You're not doing business at home. I mean, some people are, but a lot of people aren't.
Yeah. Look, I think, not to seem anti-government, but the government is filled with a lot of people over the age of 50 to 60 who really didn't grow up in the live music scene or the live scene of anything. And all they've ever known is politics. And to them, politics is purely business and money. So if something we're doing doesn't make money, they don't want any part in it, which is music a lot of the time, especially on a grassroots level. You know, I don't make any money. And I know a lot of other bands I play with certainly don't make any money until you start getting to a level where you can fill out those 2,000 person venues. And even then, you don't really make much money because it goes to the team that supports you, you know, to pay for them basically having this show happen. So, you know, they go, well, why would we want a hand in helping you to not really make that much money? And it's, yeah, you know, when those kind of political types go home, they don't listen to music. They probably watch TV, but it's like Netflix. And then even then they're probably so out of it that they don't even recognize that it's art.
Yeah. And I think it's more of the aspect, and I agree with you, it's definitely not anti-government. It's in ignorant, it's an ignorance that they're not aware of. It's an ignorance of that aspect of life, because like you said, they grew up not being in that generation of artistic exploration or going to live shows and experiencing that, or they just don't have that appreciation viewpoint. And hopefully at some point, people who are in those artistic sectors of industry or whatever can move into government and kind of show, hey, here's all the good reasons why you should support it, because arts and tourism combined, people, big festivals, there's some big festivals over there in Australia that I know of that bring huge artists over, and that generates huge levels of income, especially for a local economy and then the national economy as well. And hopefully when we get to that point, it'll trickle down and people will see that, but it all takes time. And you just Katanak just needs to become the biggest artist in the world. And then
absolutely. Yeah. And
then show Australia, hey, look what I'm doing. Support Australia.
Yeah. It's one of those things where, you know, going back to a point before, they've tried to get people in there to talk to, particularly the premier at the time, to say, hey, like, you know, what you're doing really is not that cool. You know, please recognize that we're actually doing stuff here. And, you know, they set up a whole meeting and the premier said, no, I'm not going. I don't care enough. So like, it's not any secret that the current government doesn't care about the arts. That's no secret. So hopefully, you know, some people in the arts run and get in her position so that, you know, we can actually have people that care about the fun part of life rather than the business part.
Mm-hmm. I'm actually kind of blown away by just the bluntness of it. Like, I don't care enough, I'm not coming. That's so, and I think that's also just
worded more government-y, but that was the gist of it.
That was the implied version.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that kind of blows me away, the fact that there's not that recognition of appreciation the same as it would be for the business aspect. But like you said, there'll be changes and people moving and all sorts of things, and as time goes on, things can change either for better or for worse. We all know that, and looking at every country has its pluses and minuses, but it's all about time, and it's all about trying to do what you can do best in your own capacity and what you can control. And in your specific position, Dylan, you can focus on creating music and growing yourself nationally, internationally, and who knows, you could be that one that goes in there and be like, hey, here's all this stuff I'm doing to help Australia. You guys should do it too.
Yeah. If I could, I would. One day when we make it, I will absolutely be doing that.
Oh, absolutely. So I'm kind of curious about that cultural difference between us. Like, what is the live scene like in Australia? Because you mentioned obviously the genre is mainly popular 2000s rock, punk-esque kind of stuff. Like, what is the energy of the live shows? And also, kind of to follow up that question, I'm always curious about how international artists are received in Australia. Like, let's say an artist kind of your level, maybe a little bit bigger, comes over to tour in Australia for the first time, like what's that reception at a local show for someone that's not from the area?
I mean, live music is received very, very well. People love going to live music. You know, it's the difference between us and maybe other countries is that people kind of only go to live shows that they know. So if their friend is in a band, or if someone says, hey, my friend's in a band, do you want to come? They'll come out, but people don't actively go out. Some people don't, or like a solid chunk of them don't go out to bands that they don't know. It's more of like, I know them, so I want to see them, rather than I'm kind of feeling like live music tonight, let's go out. So when other bands from around the world come here, it's not like they're snubbed, but because people don't really know who they are, they don't go and see them. And, you know, there was a band called, I'm going to find them on my Spotify right now, because they were from Canada as well, which is why I want to find them. Scenic Route to Alaska, actually, that's their name. Scenic Route to Alaska. They came out and played a tiny 30-person venue in just kind of outside the city, in Brisbane, and it was called the Milk Factory, and there was only like 30 people there, maybe not even that, honestly. And they were incredible, such an amazing band. I'd never heard of them. I just had someone who went, yo, these guys have come all the way from Canada. Do you want to go and see them? And I was kind of like, not really. I really don't want to go to the Milk Factory. It's so far away. And then, you know, I ended up going, and I was like, oh my God, they are so good. And now I've got all their songs on my Spotify. And, you know, the music that they were making was something that I hadn't heard before, at least out here, because it's not something that's done out here. And I loved it. And if they end up watching this, or if someone tells them to watch this, Coming Back, I believe the song is, that's an absolute hit. Greatest song. So love those boys. But yes, they're the only band that I've actively gone out to see that I knew was from somewhere else in the world.
Life's like a paper plane, don't steer the way. You're told no more fun, it's off to work. You need to earn a dime to have any work, but I don't play that way. And I'm always gonna say, take us back to when we were kids. We didn't know how good we had it. Now we're all just sick and sad. Take us back to before we grew up, before our problems blew up. We really needed that, hey, heads up. And I keep telling myself, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay, yeah. And even when the sky keeps falling on my head, I'm standing on my feet and reaching for the stars, yeah. Take us back
I mean, first point, I love the name The Milk Factory. That's a great name for a
venue. It literally used to be a milk factory. That's why it's called The Milk Factory. We're pretty literal when we name things.
Hey, keep it simple. That's perfect. Yeah. This was a milk factory, so the KISS method. It's amazing, and also shout out to the Scenic Boys. They're a phenomenal band. That always fascinates me because that's kind of what I expected in terms of people kind of going out to see new shows, because that's kind of something that carries over in every country, and also something that I'm curious about after the lockdown and all the kind of stuff you guys dealt with over there. Was there kind of like almost a push in terms of people who actually came out to shows? Like, were the people that like were attendance, did it kind of remain the same, like it plateaued, or was there any sort of attendance growth or new people kind of exploring because they're like, oh, I want to take advantage of going out? Or was the period kind of too short for that?
I think it was a little bit too short for that. But at the same time, even when it did come back, it was half capacity, it was seated. And after people maybe went to one or two shows and went, I don't really enjoy this. I hate sitting down. I hate being policed, because, if you ever stood up to go to the bathroom or you stood up to get a drink, we stood up to do anything basically while the band was playing, a security guard would come over and be like, all right, you're kicked out of the venue. And I watched it happen multiple times while I was playing and while other people were playing. They would, and this is a little bit after COVID in its, fantastical new form that people were initially very scared of. We could sit and be shoulder to shoulder, but as soon as you stood up, apparently you're a super spreader, because, COVID's only over 6 foot. It's not when you sit down. Everyone knows that. So a lot of musicians had, a kind of really hard time adjusting to that, because people, like, when you sit down and listen to music, it's really hard to look like you're enjoying it when you literally can't move, because otherwise you get kicked out. If you can't move to music, there's certainly no way you're going to sit there and smile. So do you know how difficult it is to perform a very upbeat set of pop music with people sitting there like this?
Mm-hmm.
Very difficult. It's not a good time. So as soon as that was lifted, the turnouts got a lot better, and the people willing to dance and be there at shows went up. Like I played a single launch a couple months ago at Tomcat, which is one of my favorite venues in Brisbane. And we filled it out completely. I have no idea what the capacity of Tomcat is. It can't be too much. I think it's like 100 to 200 people. And it was full, which was awesome. People could dance, which for a long time wasn't allowed. So that basically means people are having a way better time. And it makes you as an artist feel better to know that people are enjoying it. People might be loving it, but when they were sitting there and they couldn't move, it just, people didn't want to come back and experience something like that. They could just sit there. It's like going to like a matinee show where your favorite band is playing and you kind of just have to sit at a table. It's like, ew, no, I want to be up and dancing. So as soon as all of that was lifted, it got a lot better.
Yeah, it's interesting, kind of a transition period where, people are stuck, and that's really intense. People just getting up to go to the bathroom, get a drink, they're kicked out. I mean, I think that's also to do with the fact that, like, with a pandemic and people not really knowing what the news is going to be each different day, because depending on where you are, depending on like where you're listening to this, for example, the government could say something new every day. There could be new restrictions every day. Like, it's just continuously changing because no one really knows what's going to happen. So some aspect appreciates the overcautiousness, but also I think adding context to a scenario and understanding why a person was doing something could have been added there, as opposed to just immediately kicking someone out, because that seems kind of silly to me.
Well, it's, much like Australians, we don't really like rules that much. So any chance to break them, people usually go for it. So people didn't care that, you couldn't dance or you couldn't stand up, this or that, you know, people, because at least in Brisbane, for the longest time, we had no COVID cases. Any cases that got found were in quarantine hotels, and that's where they stayed for the most part. Bare a couple times, which was like out of a year that it's been happening was like 3 weeks. So, you know, people knew we had no COVID cases. So they were like, well, why are you making me sit down if, you know, we know there's no COVID. It's been said there is no COVID here. You know, surely it doesn't matter. So, you know, people did that anyway. And then after a while, I think, you know, the venues just got sick of not wanting to pay fines for people dancing and that kind of stuff, because, you know, it wasn't just policed by venues. Like the government would come in and be like, oh, someone's dancing, that's another 10K out of your pocket. So venues weren't taking that risk.
Yeah, it's that over cautiousness and policing and making it very intense. And like you mentioned before we got started, the like Australian government is, and that's the thing. Australians are known for wanting to do what they want to do and not taking any shit, which I fucking love that attitude. But
yeah, we're like Americans, but we're a little bit nicer.
Honestly, the perfect description. Yeah. But I'm glad to hear that like people were excited to go back at shows and that you were able to fill that venue and shows are rolling again and things are going positive, and I'm very excited to see what you have coming next. And speaking of that, we're almost at the end of this. What is next for Katanak? What is on the horizon?
So next for Katanak, we've got a song called Sunday that is coming out on the 7th of May. So literally a week away, or whenever this gets posted, I'm not sure. A week away from today. Probably it'll be released whenever this goes out. But so I wrote that with a friend of mine called Jules Kenny, who's in a bigger band from Brisbane called Electric Lemonade, who are awesome, by the way. If anyone wants to check out their music, it's all over Spotify. And so, you know, she followed me on Instagram one day. I was a fan of the band, so I messaged her, and then we got to writing. And then, you know, we created this song, which I think is really awesome. It's an ode to summer. And while it's kind of winter for us, it's heading into summer for you guys. So it's the kind of song, you know, that you imagine that you put on when you're driving to a beach party or to a friend's house. You know, it makes you feel good. You can feel the warmth of the song when you listen to it. So it's definitely one of my favorite songs that I've ever written, especially now that I've got one of my good friends on it as well. So I think everyone will enjoy it. You can find that on Spotify and Apple Music, Deezer, and it'll be all over my Instagram as well under Katanak Music, Katanak Music. So if anyone wants to check that out when it comes out on the 7th of May, please feel free, because it's a great song.
Fantastic. All of Katanak's info will be in the description down below if you're watching this on YouTube or you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you're consuming this. Dylan, this has been an absolute pleasure getting to know you and chatting with you for a little bit. Anything else you want to promote last minute? Anything else you want to say?
I mean, anyone from around the world, thank you so much for listening. Really appreciate everything. You know, always keep streaming that music, and definitely send me a message. Actually, not many artists like this, but I really like when people message me, because, you know, you really develop that personal connection with the people that are listening to your music. So anyone that feels like they want to send me a message, please do. I always respond to the best of my ability.
Beautiful. Everybody send Dylan a message, send Dylan some love, share the music around, share the episode around. Thank you guys for watching. I will see y'all in the next one. Take it easy. Peace.